Okay, so we are at 11:11, and I think we got the last of the folk coming in. If you're in the back, if you wouldn't mind shutting the door, I think that would be a wonderful thing. So thank you all for attending today's session on Beyond the Final Chapter, using data to understand life after graduation. There are a lot of, when we think about storytelling, right, the storytelling of a student who is, trying to have their educational journey, there's a couple of, conflict points, I would say, throughout a student's journey, right? Like, how do you actually get them to college? And then once they're here, how do you get them to be successful? And the end part of that story is ideally that they are happy and they have met all of the outcomes that they are desiring to get out of higher education. And so one of the ones that we're going to talk about today are related to career outcomes. I'm lucky enough to be joined today by a variety of people that I have gotten to meet over my 13 years here at ASU. My name's Alicia Raditz. I'm Senior Director of Institutional Analysis, joined today by Shelley Potts, University Office of Evaluation and Educational Effectiveness, Sarah in Career Services, and Jay in ASU Enterprise Partners. I'm going to give it over to Sarah to talk about the value of thinking about college, post-college careers.
Good morning, everyone. So I want you to think back to when you were deciding about your future. So put on your way back hat for some of you, and for some of you, maybe not so much. What made you think about going to college? What did you think that experience would provide you? Today, these questions are more relevant than ever as we think about the cultural and economic climate. Families are having these conversations at the dinner table. They're seeing them on the headlines. For current students, for prospective students, for their family members, they're trying to make sense of all of this complex information, data, and emotions as they're making decisions about their future. Naturally, one of the first things they want to talk about, what are the outcomes? What are the career outcomes? As central teams, we have a lot of data, but when it lives in silos, we don't have a complete picture. By collaborating and leveraging all of our data together, we can tell a much more compelling story about our students. Today, our goal is to spark your imagination about how we can use all of this information to deepen insight and our impact. I'm going to turn it over to Shelley.
All right, good morning, everyone. Excuse me, good morning, everyone. This is our foundational roadmap. It defines the core why It defines our core why, the full value of what we need to realize when we are collecting career outcomes data. And we organize this into 5 critical categories of impact. First is foundational quality and credibility. And this is the data that we use to validate our reputation as an institution. And it helps us answer key questions like, how do we rank among public institutions for the employability of our graduates? And you've all seen that lately. In which areas are we nationally recognized as we are compared to our peer institutions? The second is student outcomes and return on investment. And this is where we fulfill our promise to our students and to their families. And we use career data to answer key questions like the percentage of alumni who are employed within 6 months after graduation and the median starting salaries across our academic program. The next 2 categories, market demand and curriculum effectiveness, are about immediate relevance and continuous improvement. And career outcomes data can help us answer questions like, who are the leading companies who are recruiting and hiring our graduates? And to what extent do our graduates report that their job utilizes the knowledge and the skills that they developed while they were here as students? And finally, strategic planning. And this is really our long-term compass. We use this data to conduct multi-year trend analyses to answer questions like, how have our career outcomes evolved over the past 5 years, and what factors might have contributed to these trends? There we go. All right. So now let's take a look at some of the ASU's internal institutional surveys. And this is really the most immediate and detailed and human source of data that we collect. And this gives us insights that complement the administrative and government records that Alicia will talk about later. It's really an essential starting point because it allows us to directly capture the student experience as well as the self-reported details of their success. And our surveys are critical for accreditation, for official reporting, and for driving curricular and administrative change based on direct graduate feedback. And our office works directly with academic and administrative units across the university to ensure that we are collecting data that meet their diverse needs. And we track postgraduate experiences across multiple time points from their immediate plans to their trajectory several years later, and giving us a really holistic view of their career outcomes. All right, so before we talk about the actual outcomes our graduates achieve, it's essential to talk about what they tell us about their preparation and their intentions before they graduate. ASU administers 2 graduating student surveys, one for our undergraduate students and one for our graduate and law students. And these surveys are our final opportunity to capture feedback while our students are still enrolled. And the graduating student surveys do 2 main things. They provide us with some comprehensive feedback. Graduates evaluate their entire experience while they're here at the university, their satisfaction with their major, their services that they engage with, as well as our contribution to the knowledge and skills that they develop while they're students here at the university. It also provides us some perceived preparation, information about their perceived professional preparation. We ask students directly about their satisfaction with their career preparation, the quality of the courses that they took in their major and in general studies, and how effectively we as an institution prepared them for their career and for further study after they leave the university. And collectively, this data is used for the critical uses that you see here up on the screen: program assessment, specialized accreditation, planning, decision-making, official reporting, those sorts of things. But these pre-graduation insights on their intent, that is their plans after they graduate, and their preparation, which is their perception of their readiness for their career or graduate school, provide us with the crucial context that really frames the career outcomes that we measure through the First Destination Survey that Sarah will talk about next.
So I know a lot of you are very familiar with FDS. I see a lot of familiar faces from monthly phone calls as we prepare for every semester. So First Destination Survey, much like its name, what you would expect is their first destination after ASU. So this is a national survey organized by NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Students answer the first question is, where are they off to next? Employment, are they continuing their education, military, volunteering, all of those good things. The survey starts about 4 weeks before graduation and ends 6 months after graduation. So yes, it sometimes can overlap a little bit with graduating student report card, but we work together on those surveys so that there's not too much duplicate information, or there's some intentional duplication of some of those questions. The information we gather is in 3 kind of different levels. So there is the national level questions that are set for everyone who's using FDS, and then there are ASU specific questions and college questions. The information that is gathered is a little specific to based on what their outcome is. So if they answer that they took a full-time job, some of the questions are going to be around who is their employer, where is it located, what is their salary, continuing education, what kind of degree program are they going into, where is it located at, etc. And then there's some ASU specific questions, and we'll talk about a couple of those in a moment. And then right now, about half of our colleges have college questions, or at least a college question in there. If you're not sure if your specific college or the college that you work with does, we'd be happy to share that information with you. Some unique features of this one, as I mentioned, colleges have the opportunity to add a question. Graduates can also go in and update their status. So if we have a graduate who's really on the ball and they answer the survey as soon as it comes out right before graduation, maybe they haven't made a decision on a graduate school, or they haven't accepted a job offer yet, but say 3 months after graduation they can go back in and update the survey. Or, as the next line would tell you, a staff member can update it. So between UOEEE, academic colleges, our department, there's a lot of phone calls and email outreach to graduates to making sure we have the most up-to-date information. So we can go in on the back end and say, oh, I talked to Bob. Bob accepted a job at Intel, great. And then we can go through on the back end and update it so that we have more accurate information, as long as it's before that 6-month period. After that, the survey is closed. And then as Shelley mentioned, kind of all those different uses of the data, FDS is All of those. We use it for assessment and accreditation purposes, a lot of program improvement purposes, which I'll share an example of. Also a lot for marketing and recruiting. As we talk about incoming students and families, outcomes is one of the things they ask most about, and First Destination has a lot of data that incoming families are really interested in. Where are students going right after they leave ASU, and we can provide them with a lot of that information. So I'm going to give you a couple of just brief examples about how colleges are already using some of this FDS data. So the picture on the side of the screen is just an example of an internal kind of outcomes sheet that we produce for academic colleges or departments with some overall information on there. The yellow or the maroon circle on the bottom corner shows location. So that information can be particularly powerful for some of our colleges who have a large number of graduates who stay in Arizona. As you can imagine, our charter is about the communities we serve and our workforce development. So having a large number of graduates who stay in Arizona is really impactful, especially for folks in the Teachers College or Edson or CHS who are really looking at the impact of the workforce. It can also be really helpful when we're looking at our online population. If we have a significant number of online students in a particular major or concentration area located in, say, Chicago, it can be really helpful for us to make sure we have employers and to secure those relationships so that students have a lot of experiential internship and job opportunities. And then oftentimes, I think nursing maybe more so than others, they use some of this location data for accreditation purposes when they're filling out those surveys. The next piece that I want to share about is over here on the other side of the screen in the gold box. So the top two questions up there are ASU prepared me to succeed in a career and ASU prepared me to find a career. These are questions that students fill out when they're completing FDS, which can offer a whole lot of really interesting data, especially when you start drilling down to the academic college and the program or even major level, can be some really insightful information. So I want to show you an example of how CISA, and I know I see some CISA friends here already, of something that they discovered last year. And I'm sorry to use animation, I really despise it, but it was just a little overwhelming to have it all on the screen at once. So the first part you're going to see, and these are screenshots from the dashboard, which we'll share about later, just shows you ASU overall. Let me close out that box up top. So that the first one is ASU helped me in finding a career, and the second one is ASU prepared me to succeed in a career. And then I'm just going to show you the breakdown for CISA undergrad overall, so campus and digital immersion. So 58% and 76%, which are just slightly higher than the overall ASU outcomes. And then we started drilling down by school. So we looked at the applied arts, sciences and arts degree, and the numbers dropped just a little bit to 55 and 69. So CISA wanted to know, well, why is that? What happened there? So we started drilling down by specific academic programs. Liberal studies, the numbers, they dropped a little bit more here. So 51% and 66, which is significantly lower than CISA overall and ASU overall. So then we went looking for the exemplars, like who was doing really well. And then we found applied biological sciences, and their numbers were 17% and 10% higher than our folks in liberal arts or in the liberal studies degree. And what we discovered was the applied biological sciences have career courses embedded in their undergraduate major map, which makes pretty significant difference for those students. I know we can't draw an exact correlation there, but if students are taking courses around career exploration and job exploration and feeling more prepared, you can kind of see the difference that it had compared to our liberal studies degree where we don't necessarily have any of those courses embedded. When you're drilling down to every college, every degree, these numbers can fluctuate pretty wildly. As you can imagine, like nursing and education for our traditional teacher pathways, those numbers are usually really strong. Like students have a pretty significant, strong path that they're going on. Things like liberal studies, communication, psychology, where it's a little more broad, it can get, it can go in a lot of different directions, but that's really helpful for a college to see, wow, these classes might be making an actual difference, and how do we take that and put that into our other degree programs. If you're interested or curious, I'm happy to drill down into any of the degree programs you have, but in interest of time, I'm going to turn this back over to talk about the next one.
All right. While the FDS is the immediate picture, the alumni survey provides the longer-term perspective. The 3-year window is critical for tracking career trajectory metrics like salary growth, degree completion, and professional licensure, which are some of those indicators of sustained career success. Crucially, the alumni survey enables ASU to capture valuable perceptual data. This includes the long-lasting value of an ASU degree, the application of ASU acquired knowledge and skills, and the overall satisfaction with their academic experience or their overall ASU experience. This context is essential. It's information that we can't simply get from administrative wage records. The alumni survey's longer-term perspective is also vital. So by connecting those objective outcomes like salary with perceived perception, we're able to validate that our curriculum and experiences provide an enduring value. And this feedback informs high-level, long-term decision-making and strategic planning and ensures that our curriculum remains relevant to the evolving workforce needs. All right. So we've just covered some of the specifics of our three primary survey instruments, the graduating student report card, or graduating student surveys, the FDS, and the alumni surveys. And this slide kind of summarizes their collective and synergistic value, the essential role that they play in driving action across the institution. Internal survey data provide three core benefits that you see here on the screen. First is custom on-demand reporting. We don't just collect the data and store it in a warehouse, we make it usable. So by synthesizing the results from all three of these surveys into an online demand tool, we empower administrators to create some multi-year trend reports, apply flexible filters like college and program and campus. And this capability allows our users to precisely target specific areas for improvement, but also quickly highlight some success stories about our graduates. Second, our surveys provide some direct institutional validation. This is where our survey data drives core institutional efforts like compliance and constantly improving our programs. And this breaks down further into two specific high-impact areas. The first being curriculum validation. We actively listen to our alumni. They tell us directly which skills and the knowledge that they developed at ASU that they're actually using in their careers. And this feedback is invaluable because it directly feeds into our faculty's work in terms of program assessment and academic program reviews. And this is how we ensure that our curriculum stays relevant to the workforce, not just today, but for years after our students graduate. And the second high-impact area is accreditation. Survey data is critical for our credibility. It gives us some required evidence for specialized accreditation, like for ABET for engineering, by validating what is actually happening to our students and confirming that they are successful and satisfied with their experiences and with their ASU preparation. The third benefit you can see here on the screen is granular insights on alignment. This is the greatest strength of our internal survey data. Through our surveys, we really capture the human dimension of their success. There's self-reported data about their job functions, their job satisfaction, crucial questions about their skill utilization and the knowledge that they gained at ASU. Our surveys are really the voices of our graduates, and this depth of insight is simply unavailable from things that we would pull from government records or other administrative records. So it really provides that key contextual information. Now, as data professionals, we must always be kind of transparent about potential data limitations. While our survey data is very rich, all survey data has limitations. It can be vulnerable to things like non-response bias and the subtlety of what people tell us. So to meet the highest standards of credibility, and so we must combine and consolidate and cross-validate these with these self-reported figures with some objective external sources. And this brings us to the next section where Alicia is going to talk about how we leverage U.S. Census data and Arizona employment.
Well, I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about both of these things today because this is data that you have access to immediately. So if you were to look online on any of these sources, you would get a really good holistic view of ASU's data as it relates to wage information, but with two slightly different flavors. So the first one we're going to be talking about is U.S. employment data through something called the Postsecondary Employment Outcomes Explorer. We refer to it as the PSEO because it's a little bit longer of a name. So our office submits data on those who graduate to the Census Bureau, and they match those records with U.S. wage data. So in terms of data coverage, we get incredible data coverage because it is literally matching those employment records to try to figure out which of those students are working and how much of and how many and what kinds of dollars they make. This provides information that is aggregated so that it's not identifiable. It is on a public website so that it does respect privacy and all things related to that. But it will show information on median earnings, industry of employment, and geographic location, which I'll give you some examples of about in a second. It also includes all participating institutions and states. And so what is helpful there is it can give a really good view of what it looks like to, for graduates who earn wages and to compare it between states. So how do Arizona graduates maybe compare to another state in the U.S.? And so having that sort of benchmarking and comparability is really helpful and useful. And that it's publicly accessible. But one of the challenges is that data aren't returned back at the individual level, so sometimes it's really hard to aggregate that information in ways that might be super actionable, even though it's still informative. So just to give some quick screenshots, once you go to this website, I've selected Arizona State University, baccalaureate degrees, and all cohorts. Those are all things that you can change when you log onto there. You can also see how our partners at U of A and NAU are doing as well on these metrics. And then on the bottom, you'll see some program names. They're called classification of instructional programs. Those are essentially groupings of like majors at the U.S. level. And so you can look by all of those groupings of like majors what the median salaries are. Similarly, you can do that same kind of effort and look to see where those students are working, and it's broken out by a general geographic distribution. You can see for us, a lot of those baccalaureate degrees across all cohorts end up working in Arizona, but you can see also a fair number are in Pacific, Mountain Balance, East North Central, and so on. And then you can also see what industry they're working in. So we have an incredible number working in educational services and healthcare and social assistance. And there's even a third version of this where you actually have this view of where do they work and what industry are they in. And like our earlier slides, you can actually click on any one of these to look at a specific grouping of a like major. The next one we're going to talk about is Arizona employment data, which is made possible through an agreement between the Arizona Board of Regents and the Department of Economic Security. And basically all three institutions send their graduates by way of ABOR through DES so that we can understand the earnings of our students who work in Arizona. So that is a very specific subset of institution. These are Arizona wages of people who are here. Depending on the population of student you work with, that may resonate more or less with the graduates from your areas. But basically, Arizona Board of Regents then creates a report with this every year so that you can see how our students are doing, which is really wonderful because it tells some really compelling stories to both about students and their economic contributions to the state of Arizona. One of the things about this is that it has a very strict data sharing agreement, so how we can use the data is very limited, although we're looking at trying to find new and different ways to share that information that it still respects the data sharing agreement. This is just a screenshot of what one of those reports looks like if you were to go to the website and look at it. They're really interested in talking about how many graduates in our workforce there are and how that contributes to the state economy. That's a really important narrative to tell not only to our students and families, but also policymakers and the community at large. And one of the things they use about this is to figure out how much more money a student who graduates from ASU or NAU or U of A or all combined might make in Arizona compared to other kinds of students. This is an example of a report that you might see if you were to click onto here. So just to help interpret on the far right side, which is going to be, you have a category of resident, non-resident, and then total. So I'll just help you interpret this. But we have degree recipients with Arizona wages. So there are, over the last 30 years of graduates from ASU, of all of those people, there are 142,000 students who are working in the state of Arizona. 1,420,000 students working in the state of Arizona. They contribute 12.15, or they have $12.15 billion in wages in Arizona, which is an incredible amount, and that results in roughly 1,000 estimated Arizona state taxes paid. So having students who come from our institutions, who then contribute to the Arizona economy by working, is incredibly important to the narrative of how we talk about the value of higher education. It can also break down this information by those classification of instructional programs that we talked about a second ago, which is once again a grouping of like majors. So these are about the number of graduates we have working in the state of Arizona. Other pages on the deck will show their median salary. And so all of this is about communicating talent in Arizona, how many graduates are working in Arizona. They have breakouts for non-residents, so how many people came to ASU as non-residents and continue to work in Arizona is a really compelling argument. How much do our students earn? That's very helpful for both our students and our families. And we are able to figure out what does that earning potential look like over time. And then, as mentioned earlier, the economic impact part of the story is incredibly important. How much do they contribute in state taxes? What are the total wages that they earn? And what share of the workforce is made up of ASU graduates is something else that we can explore via this data. So really powerful information. As mentioned, a very tight data sharing agreement, but we are looking forward to help finding new ways to share this information with the broader ASU community and figuring out the right places to do so. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jay, who's going to talk to you about Lightcast data.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Patel. Good to see you here. I recognize a lot of people. I am with an organization known as ASU EP. What exactly is ASU EP? We are part of the ASU ecosystem, but we are not ASU. So for example, if I go up my org chart, I never terminate in President Crow. We have our own CEO. We are actually our own nonprofit 501c. Now, even though we're not part of ASU, you can't tell us apart. Culturally, philosophically, policy-wise, we behave just like ASU. My employee badge looks just like your employee badge, right? So we have one customer, and our customer is ASU, right? Makes it pretty easy. Yay. The other thing about us is our mission statement is very simple. We advance ASU's charter. It's that simple. Think of us as a Swiss Army knife, right? And what we do is we generate solutions, and we also derive resources. So the foundation, ASU Foundation, you've heard of that? That's us. The building at the corner of University and College, where President Crow sits, we own that building. Good. So let me talk about Lightcast. What is Lightcast? Lightcast is a for-profit company. And they specialize in market analytics, specifically as it pertains to labor markets. They generate insights, analytics on market trends, skill sets that are in demand, and also career pathways. For example, if I wanted to be a data scientist, right, they have this whole roadmap, must know SQL, you should learn Python, etc. And they do this by looking at billions and billions of job postings. They look at career profiles, LinkedIn, and they also look at government data. And Alicia talked a lot about the type of government data that they look at. So the next thing here is, why am I involved with this initiative, right? I'm ASU EP, and this is ASU. ASU EP owns alumni data. We are the stewards of alumni data, especially as it pertains to outreach, to philanthropy, and the official numbers. So when President Crow wants to publish how many alumni we have, they come to us. So anybody want to guess? ASU, how many degreed alumni? Just take a wild guess. Nobody? Jennifer, you're going to cheat? Yeah. It's, if you include Legacy Thunderbird, it's about 700,000. So that's a lot of alumni. As far as integrations with Lightcast, Pragmatically, we send them 3 files. The files consist of demographic information, program information, and degree information. And then the files are student information, alumni, right? ASUEP owns alumni data, and non-degreed alumni. Non-degreed alumni is a little tricky. If you ask 5 people what they think non-degreed alumni are, you'll get 6 answers. But in this context, if you've had any interaction with ASU from an educational perspective, and you're not a current student and you're not degreed, you're non-degreed alumni, no more guessing games here. So we have about 500,000 non-degreed alumni. So if you look at alumni, degreed, non-degreed, well over 1 million. So we have a lot of scale here. Now, what does Lightcast give us in return? They give us these massive data files. And basically, the data they give us helps us answer 2 questions. How much are our graduates earning right now? And then what about the industry? Like, what are their peers doing? How much are they earning? Maybe they're doing better than their peers. Maybe they're not. This data obviously is normalized. It's sliced and diced based on region, right? If I'm in Arizona and I'm in IT, I'm not making as much as somebody, let's say, in San Francisco. They look at things like, how many years have you been in the career, right? If I'm starting off, I'm not making as much as, say, somebody who's been in it for 30 years. So there's a lot to this data. Now, what's the so what? We send them some files, we get some data back. There's 2 things as a result of this initiative. There's actually 3. Since we own alumni data, we use the data that they give back to clean up our records. So maybe on file we have that somebody worked at Intel, but now they actually work at Microchip. So we use that to update some demographic information. The other thing we get as a result of our engagement with Lightcast is we get an analyst portal. And that portal gives us the ability to first run canned reports, and I have an example of a canned report right there. Or you could even generate your own custom reports based on our data, and it's pretty powerful. They are the market leaders in this space, and what we have available to us is actually really, really good. At first, I was a skeptic being a data engineer. Well, why do I need a third party? But just going through their analytic platform, it's pretty good stuff that we get. And there's the website. There's an appendix on what the websites are, and then how to get a hold of me if you want access to the portal. The other item is there's actually a student-facing portal where students can match their interests with jobs, competencies, skills required. And as an example here, I have a job market insight. What does that look like? On the top, you can see some wage information, what the median is, technical skills. Take a look at number 2. This is an example for insights into atmospheric and space scientists in Arizona, housekeeping. Like, that's a little bit worrisome. That housekeeping would be number 2 there, and then core competencies. So basically, that's it as far as Lightcast is concerned. So if you had one takeaway from everything I said, is we have access to labor market data, right, as provided by a third-party company that's a leader in this space. All right, so turn it over to Alicia. Bring us home.
Well, thank you guys for going through and listening about a whole bunch of different data sources for how you can start to piece together all of the different information we have out there about career outcomes and what that might mean, how we might use that data, and some of the purposes that are behind the data, which I think are really important together. So all of these data sources help answer the same question about how our students do after graduation relative to their careers. I'll also just add, there's probably a totally different presentation that's out there about how students do after graduation for non-career related things, right? Like in terms of skills or maybe giving back to their community or whatever it might be. So also just keep that in the back of your mind as well. There are public reports available that have a high level of information about how the university looks like in terms of their outcomes, broken down by those groupings of like majors. And then there are also all of those internal surveys that we do and internal reporting that maybe gets us some additional level of detail to help you drill down into your specific needs and maybe to look at the specific students that you're working with. But what is really important is that you pay attention to the details. So everything that we've talked about has different benefits and uses and audiences. So one thing to think about is to what extent do you need Arizona employment information versus U.S. employment information? That question directly relates to what I presented about as it relates to the PSEO and the Arizona Board of Regents reporting. So think about what population you have in mind and which kind of data you need to look at in terms of employment. Do you care if the coverage of data is complete or is a response rate okay? If you are really looking for some detailed drilling down of data, you might have some trade-off so that you can look at maybe some of our institutional surveys that maybe have a less than 100% of coverage. Or maybe you look at both the high-level information that is out there about overall salaries using any of those public sources and then supplement thinking about it with that drilled down information that you're able to get using those internal surveys. How far out do you want to know the outcomes of our alumni? So in the example for the Arizona Board of Regents, DS wages, that's going to be a year after graduation. For some of the things we've heard in terms of surveys, we have the 3-year alumni survey. We have First Destinations, which launches at the time of graduation or right before. And those all might have very different outcomes depending on when you decide to look at that information. So really think about that when you're using that data about which you would rather look at. You might want additional information about where do they work. So if you want job industry, the PSEO might be very good for that information. For the Arizona Board of Regents data, we don't have industry at the moment. You might care about employer, in which case some of our internal surveys can help you understand what are those top employers that are employing your students, or we'll see that with the Lightcast data as well, and you can understand some of the employment locations in that space as well. And then finally, who is the audience for the data? So some of the things you've heard about today might resonate more with a student, with a family member, with a politician, with an industry member. And so you want to think about who the right audience is. So a good example is the Job Market Insights one. That one that Jay showed might be a really great place for a student to look at, right? Because what you saw on the screen was talking about what are the skills that you need, what are the competencies that you need, where might you work, what is your outcomes look like for that field if you were to pursue that field. So that might be something that is very salient to students. We know that some of that's embedded with career services, and there are career folk that can help the student understand that information better. If you're talking with a policymaker, you might want to leverage one of the external facing pages that are out there, because you can talk about the state of Arizona versus maybe Kansas or New York or whatever it might be, and there might be some compelling arguments there. Or perhaps you want to talk about the wages that a set of students contribute to a state. So keeping all of those things in mind are really important for you to understand after today's session, just in the way that there are loads of data that are out there, and right now a little bit dispersed, and we're trying to figure out how to bring it together. But making sure you're attending to these specific nuances will help you in the meantime figure out which is the right one you should use, or in concert, how should you use multiple of these sources together. And so Shelley is going to give an overview of the resources that are out there.
Thank you. So we have a variety of resources that we've all talked about today. We've got a few that are public reports, the PSEO, the ABOR, the Job Market Insights, and you can see the web addresses listed here. Lightcast access, if you're interested in accessing that, we've got Jay's email address, so please reach out to him individually so he can help you connect you to that resource. And then we've got some internal data that you might be interested in. So we've got our addresses here for the FDS, as well as a survey reporting tool that is comes out of my office, and you can contact Gerald Blank.